Yeah, we're just so grateful to the Cherokee Nation and Cherokee Nation Film Office for kind of helping us find really appropriate and wonderful locations near and around Tulsa to shoot. I grew up in northeastern Oklahoma, southwest Missouri area, and my nation is in such a rural, secluded area that it would be hard to film like there, so we knew that we needed like Tulsa as our hub. And so working with them was amazing. Like they just like handed us like a binder full of locations, and we were able to find the world of fancy dance. But because Tulsa is so near northeastern Oklahoma, the topography and everything still felt like home and felt authentic to the Seneca Q to res.
Good. And for you guys, how's that? What's any emotions about that? Any feelings about that?
I mean, it's incredible to be in a film that's like 80-90% native driven, and it's the first time like I've always felt that there's a real space for tribal nations to have film offices, because it's always film incentives are always getting blocked on the state level, and it's such a, I mean, my community, I'm from Browning, Montana, my res, like Blackfeet, have gotten a number of films, and every time a film rolls through, it's always really good for the local economy, and then locals get to be in it, and like everybody's got stories about like when War Party was shooting there in the 1980s. It's like there's really something special when you're in a rural, small area, when you're on a res where it's like, you know, you're growing up and you don't really have much in the way of an arts program, so like having like films coming through is really exciting, and then like kind of just becomes part of the local like oral tradition and culture's film. So it's like, well, why aren't tribal people driving that more? And it takes a lot of work to establish a film office, obviously, and Cherokee have the means to do so. So it's just really wonderful that this film not only is like 80-90% crewed by natives, 100% created by natives, but also financed by a tribal film office. It's just, I've never experienced it, and it changes it. Like, I don't know. It's the feel of being on set, and you know, from top down. I mean, if we want to look at it hierarchically, but like in and out, you know, the entire process was so familiar to everybody, and you know, is so precious to everybody because the themes in our film touch on every tribal community. You know, every family has some story related to like the big themes in our film. MMIW, we've got, you know, the ICWA decision coming up. So having this whole project be very driven, created by Native people was incredible. And hopefully there's more of that.
And how does the film set feel different when it is sort of like have that?
You can just joke, you know? It's like, it's like your jokes aren't going to land flat, or people aren't going to be like, you know, like, oh, tell me more about that. It's just like, just let it hang, man. Just there's none of that. It's and like, I mean, the non-natives that were on our film, even like, they're used to working in Indian country and being around Indians, so it's just like, and that goes a long way when like shared experience, shared humor is flying every which way, because we're dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, but I mean, that's how our communities are so resilient, you know. What is it, the survivance? Which is actually a word we found out, sorry, referencing another interview. But yeah, like communities that experience so much historical trauma, the way that we get through it is humor. And yeah, it was just nice being on a set and being around people that like we all know what we're doing, but there's space carved out for it to be joyous and to be fun. And it's like, didn't feel like, I don't know, there's a line between handling something carefully, like holding it with both your hands, and then like being so afraid you're gonna break it that you end up like tripping over yourself trying not to break the thing, and just like, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like walking into a circle where everybody's, you know, all hands in. It's a very unique, wonderful way to create.
Mm-hmm. What were the humor moments I saw you light up when it was like, yes, we were joking and we were able to just kind of be funny and it was good.
Just being able to hang out on set, like there was never a dull moment. Like it was just so fun. Literally everybody was absolutely amazing. They're like my favorite people ever.
And you were sort of referencing the themes of the film. What are those themes for you?
Well, I mean, the undercurrent of why I'm fighting so hard to keep my niece is because her mother, my sister, is missing, and all of our communities just experience this huge epidemic of missing sisters. So that was one thing that I loved when Erica created this film and created this script, is that when you're dealing with trauma like this and it's coming from like your own communities and you know people who are going through it intimately, you don't want to be heavy-handed with the trauma aspects of it, but it is the thing that overshadows the whole film, is where's Tawi, where's my sister, where's your mom? Also, you see a world that is hard for a lot of people, and I guess like a more knit together Western, like not knit together, buttoned up sense of what a family is supposed to look like. Seeing that this child has been very much raised by me, even though I'm not biologically her mom or anything, culturally, it's a moment in the film, like the word in Cayuga for auntie is other mother. So essentially this is my child, but the government doesn't see it that way. And then, the way that a lot of people who live in rural America in general, in small, economically depressed communities, how we survive and feed our families, how there's not a lens that accepts that or sees that as being like a good, safe, conducive environment to somebody's development. It's like there's a lot of things that through any other lens, the world that we're in would have been, poor Indians, or like look at this horrible dysfunctional situation. How can we get in there and fix it and save everybody? It's like we're showing that no, we're good. We're taking care of each other. We're really tight knit. It's the outside influence that's trying to fix us, that's trying to solve our problems for us. That is the problem. So, ultimately, it's not a perfect family. It's not a perfect relationship, but it's a strong one. It's a loving one. It's a committed one throughout. I don't know. Let our writer-director speak more to the themes.
Well, I guess what for you, how has that sort of non-traditional family/community sort of informed your life, and how does that flow? How does what you grew up in with that flow into the film?
Yeah, we're raised by our families, right? And all of my aunties, blood relative or not blood relative, were who influenced me the most as I was growing up. And I have done some advocacy work over the years for the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, and I've had the opportunity to travel to many tribal communities and watch. It's the women and the queer folks in tribal communities that are working the hardest to make Native Americans safe. And so for me, I just really wanted to, kind of in a way provide a love letter to not only the people that raised me and helped make me safe growing up, but also to all of the aunties across Indian country that are doing this really rough, dangerous, but such important work to keep Native women and children safe. And it kind of framed everything. But on every one of those trips, and also even in my own personal relationships, there's just so much laughter, and there's so much. I think right now the term Indigenous joy is just getting thrown around everywhere. It stops having its impact. But for us, even on the set, it was so great. We would go from a serious scene, and then at the end of it, Isabel would cross her eyes and make a funny face, because for us, I think we were dealing with these heavy-handed topics, but we knew we needed to kind of keep each other safe and keep each other in a safe place to emotionally get through the 26 days of shooting. But ultimately, I think that all of those things are frameworks, but knowing that your aunt is also your mother makes you feel safer and makes Roki not feel so alone in the world. And regardless of at the end of our film, the wheels of justice are going to keep turning their corrupt motion, but the relationship between these two characters is going to withstand it all. And that's what I see day in and day out in my community and others. So.
And it sounds like from what you both talked about, that the film shares some themes in common with Killers of the Flower Moon, in terms of that sort of, well, we would be good, but
yeah.
and
But
you're doing great before you.
and I guess I'm wondering, is that true? And I guess what do you hope that sort of crazy high-profile film featuring you and others sort of does for the culture, if that's
Yeah,
if that's not too much to ask.
No, having something that high profile and that, I mean, again, that's a story that's a very traumatic one. That was not made by Indigenous creators, but by incredibly sensitive creatives, and the community was very involved, which was incredibly comforting to me. I mean, that's a theme here, is like communities make things. When in, I don't know, I guess in a different sense, people would look at, if you have too many people making something, then you get like a camel, the camel being a horse designed by a committee thing. It's kind of essential that when you're dealing with something that's so expansive that you have the community's input and really have them driving it. The blessing of getting to do that film is, in having that higher profile, for me just comes back to bringing attention to stories like this. I mean, independent film it's in my makeup, like I came up in independent film, and I always go back to independent film because that's where you see stories like this happening. It's a hard sell to big studios to talk about, like, queer native hustler trying to raise her niece, and it's like, you don't get the happy ending you're expecting in this, and it's like, but having that chance to bring in an audience that's going to be curious and have a very specific moment in history that's a very, like, I don't know, I don't want to call it black and white, but you look at it and it is kind of like an exploration of like the nature of evil and exploitation, and having that interest and peek into what's behind it, and then seeing like this really strong, resilient, functioning community that is trying to pretty much just stand up to the outside forces. Like, hopefully that brings the attention and just the lens to films like this one. Ultimately, that's been, so far the refreshing thing is it's a lot easier to have those conversations about projects that we want to make when there's a higher profile attached. So endlessly grateful for that.
I'll end on a sort of silly, fun question, which is, with Valentine's Day coming up, do you remember your first on-screen kiss? Or on stage, I guess it could be too.
I guess that would have been Our Town. Yeah. I played Emily in Our Town, and you have to freeze in that kiss, the wedding kiss, and poor guy, I guess, well, I know, he had a crush on me. And I was his first kiss, period. He got nervous our first take. This was theater earlier. We're doing film now. He got nervous for the first rehearsal, and he ended up biting my lip. Oh, and I felt so bad for him. Derek D, you're lovely and wonderful, and I hope you're doing well.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Have you had an on-screen kiss?
Not yet. Yeah.
I directed my first on-screen kiss in Lily in our film.
And that was both me and Crystal's first same-sex on-screen kiss.
Yeah.
So,
Crystal.
yeah.
And I was very nervous. It was funny. It was like I was like, oh God, I'm making people kiss. And then they just were so natural that it was just.
Well, it's such a well-written scene. It's like you're safe in it,
Yeah.
It's a long way from standing on stage as an awkward 15-year-old, like holding like this little wedding kiss in, your high school production of Our Town, to like, having this relationship where we had met that day. It's it's a little less awkward.
Did you bleed? Like, was it bad enough that he?
No, he was just like he was doing the I think he was scared about whether or not he should open his mouth, and like I found out later that it was his first kiss ever.
Yeah.
So
Changed his mind really quickly.
he was like, so he caught my lip. He didn't bite down hard or anything. He caught my lip a little bit. It was a little awkward. Like, just tuck that back in. Hold it. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a great story.